Hello, bonsai friends. This is Evan Pardue of Underhill Bonsai, and welcome to episode 61 of Little Things for Bonsai People. And this time I am joined by my co-host, or one of my co-hosts, Carmen Leskoviansky. How's it going this morning?
It is going just excellent. How are you?
I'm good. I'm kind of coming towards the end of the new year. I know this episode will be released in the new year, but wrapping up things with the nursery, doing a full year here. It's been both awesome and frightening at the same time. This is a small business, and watching seeing where we were at basically 5 years ago when I started here till now. It's something else. But we'll talk about New Year's stuff and going into the new year with bonsai and stuff as far as the show goes. But how's it going with you over there?
Oh, super good. I am in Michigan, actually, for the next week or so, and all of my family is here, which is super, super fun. We haven't all been together since 2018, so it's been a blast so far. And I am working on training a baby deer that has a broken leg and acquiring a new cat for my parents thanks to the cat distribution system and the stray cat in their yard. So it's been very eventful.
Yeah. And no bonsai trees in sight to work on?
Actually, I have one that I left here when I moved to Portland. It's just a pre-bonsai. It's a white pine that I collected up north, and it's in the ground. So I actually have to go make a few pruning cuts on it and make sure it's doing well. But that's it. But yeah, my hands are a little itchy. You know, actually, I went back to work yesterday at the University of Michigan. It's all the trees there in the collection, and so that was pretty cool. I really wanted to do some wiring, and I was like, no, I gotta not. So
not enough time.
Not today.
Yeah, I actually. Let me just get through the rest of the.
Yeah, sorry, I'm all like.
No, but no, today's topic is going to be discussion of the new year, and also we want to do a fun opening episode for this year. Basically, in quotes. So you got a bonsai tree for Christmas. What do you do now? And it's kind of a scary thing when people are brand new to bonsai and their loved one is like, oh, I got you something really cool this year. And it's this live plant that you have to take care of now. So
I've already seen all the posts on the Facebook bonsai groups of, look what I got for Christmas. Now what? So we figured we'd address that here today.
Yeah. Because we are a beginners to somewhat intermediate bonsai podcast. So we concentrate on helping people break into bonsai and find their footing, and maybe we can have more people continue on, brand new and fresh into bonsai. This is always like the revelation, or New Year's resolution, I guess you can say, for bonsai, because it's like you could get into it or you could fail really hard at the beginning and just get disheartened. And so we want to help out with that. We always do. But before we get to that, I do need to mention that our podcast is sponsored by our amazing patron over on patreon.com/little things for bonsai people. Head on over to that website and become a Bonsai Best Bud, and hang out in the Discord and get your name mentioned at the beginning of every episode. And the list has gotten quite steep. We might have to change it this year. If we hit, we're almost at the 40 mark, but I might have to change it. So I'm going to go through this list. Don't know how many more times we're going to be doing it this year, but thank you guys so much for.
You might have to just shout out the newbies.
Yeah, we might have to just do something shorter and sweeter, but we're going to honor the way we've been doing it for the time being. Starting off the list with Tori Solis, Vicky Auth, Boyd Snellgrove, Ricky Ruins, Joshua Bentley, Snappy Chappers, Joel Jenkins, Justin Knight, Backyard, Bonsai Australia, Greenwich Gardens, Taylor Peacock, Chase Pertweet, Austin Atkins, Karen Codswell, Louis Torres, AC Castle, Bonsai Marine, Joss Potts, Chris Fassoon, Timothy Arsenal, Randy Bennett, Victrina Ridgway, Laron's Bonsai Yard, Nancy Hoffman, Nate Murray, Joshua Roth Tools, J.M. Stewart Woodworking, Warehouse Rat, and then and also Varies Bonsai. And then we have a handful of brand new Bonsai Best Buds, because we did an announcement that we would be giving a Joshua Roth tool away as one of our first giveaways, because that is one of our podcast sponsors. Thank you so much, Joshua Roth Tools, for sponsoring our show, both in the Patreon and also just being an overall just sponsor of us. So we had a bunch of people jump on for that giveaway because at the $5 level, we were giving away Josh Roth tools and a couple other goodies. And one of our other Bonsai Best Buds, $5 Best Buds, won it. I'll announce that in a moment. But we have new ones with David N. He upgraded from a $1 member to $5. Sean Seaman, Gilbert Juarez, David J. Oh gosh, Betsoncini. Does that sound right?
I don't know. I'm not looking at the list. Let me look.
We also, sorry about that. Ben Crehan is also a Bonsai Best Bud. So.
Yeah, David Bettaccini.
There we go.
Bettaccini.
And then a shout out to our Specimen Best Buds. So these are our $30 members. Thank you guys so much for subscribing at this level. Ryu in, and also Bill's Bayou. Thank you so much. I know Bill personally. Thank you guys so much for subscribing to that top level there. You guys will be receiving your t-shirts and also 30-minute sessions with our amazing show hosts. With me, Carmen, or Mike. We'll be scheduling those every month. That's the special things you get at that tier. And also the winner of the Joshua Roth giveaway was Bonsai Marine. So congratulations, Bonsai Marine. I know we mentioned
Bonsai Marine.
But also, there you go. Good tools, Joshua Roth tools, the best. And also, you got a really cool hat, like a Rayuga hat. I'm hoping he'll get the package before this episode comes out because I wanted it to be a surprise, but you'll see. But yeah, I can't go too much further without mentioning our editor, Matt O'Donnell. He makes us sound smart. He cleans up our audio, makes us enjoyable to listen to. So go over to mattodonnell.com. That is ODONNELL.com to fill out a contact form and start your own podcast show with him, or just an audio engineering project. He's a set bassist living in Nashville, Tennessee. He's an all-around awesome guy. It's in the script. I say it every time. And I know that there is a future project that Matt has in the works right now, and we're excited to be a part of it. So I think we'll be...
Oh, you're still not telling me, are you?
What?
It's still a secret, because you wouldn't tell me last time what the secret project was.
Oh, no, it's still secret. We have to keep teasing it. That's how you build it up. You just keep kind of like dropping
But I don't even get to know. It's not fair. You'll
see. I don't want to spoil anything, though.
Fine.
But yeah. So yeah, we like I was mentioning earlier, we had a lot of stuff happen this year. We have gone from, I mentioned this, I know said this in the Christmas episode last week, where I was just kind of, going over how thankful we are for things. Obviously, it's the time of the year to be thankful for things, but we're kicking off the new year the right way by going in and starting from the roots, from the ground up. That's a pun. Every single time. Got to say it. Now that I got dad energy going on.
You gotta increase your number of dad jokes here.
Oh yeah. We were supposed to have a number of dad jokes introduced, plugged into the show, so don't forget. I got a good Christmas joke for you. Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Well, since we're coming off the back end of Christmas, we're going into the new year. Do you want to say it now, or? I sure do. Are you ready? Yeah, go ahead. What do you call a skunk at Christmas? I'm not sure. Jingle smells. He doesn't like it. That stinks. Yeah, that really does stink. You know those. It does stink. That one that was better. That was a good run up to that joke. You know those little like popper things that you can get for Christmas, where it's like one person pulls one side and it like has a little bit of gunpowder. Yeah, Christmas cracker. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are pretty awesome because there's still gunpowder in them. They smoke when you pull them, but yeah, sometimes those pop open. They have like the crown, like the paper crown in them, and a little toy. And there's always like some stupid, corny joke in there. There was one that was so ridiculous. I had it in my pocket and I was going to save it. I need to see if I can find it. It was kind of ridiculous, but yeah, expect more jokes, especially like that. Something we're trying to plug into the show more often, just to be silly. But yeah, I felt like I was getting onto a tangent for a second, and then I cut. I interrupted you with my joke. You were saying something about being thankful. No. It was before the Patreon shout out. Oh, Patreon shout out. I don't know. Okay. I'm sure we'll get back around to it. Probably. But no. So I don't know if there's any future announcements this year that I can think of right now, other than, let's see. I know that there will be the BCI in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've mentioned that before, but then there will be Bonsai Central as well, which there will be, obviously we'll have a little advertisement on that later on. They're also a sponsor of our show. But other than that, I can't think of anything else coming up this year that's really out of the ordinary. Oh yeah, Save Bonsai, that's happening here at my nursery in Folsom. That's happening. We're having Mike over here for that. That's going to be really fun. Was there anything that you can think of that's happening on the West Coast?
Yeah, Pacific Bonsai Expo is happening I think it's the end of October this year. Okay. So there's a new date and a new location. I don't have them off the top of my head, but I believe that they've posted them. So get your trees ready, get ready to submit for Pacific Bonsai Expo. And yeah, I'll be there.
Excellent. There's you. There's you a Little Things cameo over on the West Coast, and but by then I'll be donezo. I'll be graduated. I don't know. I'll be done. Michael will tell you that you are good.
Michael will say goodbye.
You'll be like, great. Now I
get out of my house. But I plan to be there anyway.
Yeah, and then we'll be. When was that? We know that you said it a few times, like September. That'll be
sometime this fall, September, October. It's a little bit flexible at the moment. So
cool.
Yep.
But yeah, other than that, I can't think of any other. I know that it's a good time. Like if anyone's in the United States and they're planning on doing the national show, Bill Valvanis did announce that he's doing another one.
Oh, sweet.
So that will be next year in September. Just putting it out there, this is the perfect opportunity to, if you're looking to put your first tree into a show like that, pot your tree up into the pot that you want it now, like the tree that you're going to submit, because giving yourself a full year just to see how the tree performs and see how it grows. Maybe you need to fill in some bald spots or develop some branches. And then when you go into the next year, you have a full cycle, a full spring, summer, fall, winter into the next year. That's my preferred way to prep trees for a show like that, because then you know you have enough time to kind of, because that's one of the things that happened to me is like I potted up my wing dome, that first tree I submitted, and then like the next year after the national show was over, that was the best it looked in my opinion. I was like, crap, I should have put the cycle further. So just putting it out there.
Give yourself the 2 years.
Yeah.
Or a year and a half ish, whatever that is. Yeah. Give yourself the time to really get your tree ready.
But pertaining to the topic of being a beginner's podcast show, I guess it is a little touch on, like, we do encourage a lot of people to step towards showing their trees. That is considered beginner topic material. But let's break into our main topic, which is, so you either unwrapped, or it was sitting outside because they didn't want to put it into a box or something, or it was strangely in a stocking somehow.
Hold on.
Which, I mean, that is possible though, but
possible.
Yeah, it is possible. So you got a bonsai tree for Christmas.
Now what do you do?
What do you do? I think this is a pretty awesome little topic here. It really hits home for me, because I, at the bonsai nursery, have sold a lot of just like first time bonsai tree gifts to people. So they're like, I'm looking for a Christmas present this year, and it's a bonsai tree. And I've heard that every year. So yeah, so we got a little list of things to go through here just for you first timers. But I think we should cover some of the red flag, like the kind of like the elephant in the room kind of complaint that I have about beginner bonsai stuff. Do you know what I'm kind of talking about?
No. Tell me which elephant has arrived.
The elephant in the room.
There's many of them,
would be the starter kits that include a seed, soil, and a pot. So why would that be bad, Carmen?
I've seen these, and they're so. I don't even really know where to start. There's usually you get multiple species of seed. You get a juniper, maple, maybe a pine, something like that. And you get like one tube to grow them all in. And all of these seeds have different germination requirements. You don't know how long these seeds have been sitting on the shelf. I think, do you get like a little peat brick or whatever to plant it? I don't know what kind of soil they go in, but it's first of all not a great way to germinate seeds because they'll get too humid and too hot, and you'll get a really long cotyledon, so extension of that first shoot. And then a juniper, a pine, and a maple don't ever grow or germinate the same way. So growing them all in the same tube just doesn't really work. Not to mention that it's going to be at least, 3 or 5 years before you can really do anything with it. So they're cute kits. They are like a really cute idea for a gift, but they're really kind of impractical as far as a way to start bonsai.
Yeah. And it's something that I've heard a couple of people come up to me personally and be like, oh, yeah, you do bonsai. I just got my significant other a bonsai starter kit and it has a little seed on it. How do I start it? What do we do now? And I'm like, it's a good thing you didn't spend too much money on that. It's kind of what it's kind of like my kind of direct thing that, I feel bad for saying that, but it's just like,
I feel bad too, but it's like, it's really, I've never seen a success.
I think it would be an interesting challenge to open up a new thread on the Discord, and this should be
our 2024 challenge of get a grow your own bonsai kit
and
with
grow
the bonsai
literally
seed,
one
and
from
to grow a bonsai from seed from it has to be from the kit though. Yes. It can't just be any seed. You have to get the kit.
Like I grow Kinzu kumquats from seed, and that is a little bit more fun because they grow fast. Junipers from seed, that sounds like it would be painful.
I don't know.
I think it would be a funny little thing. It's just like, okay, well, if the show is running for long enough, which I have faith in the show being a long running show, and we come back and we're like, oh, how are those trees from 2023? And we're like, got like an old man voice. But it'll be 2024. I'm gonna have to get that right because the release of this episode, we're gonna be in 2024.
Get it together, man.
Yeah. But anyway, so those are kind of one of the really unfortunate things. They're sweet gifts. They're, your significant other was not wrong for wanting to help you get into one of the best, arguably one of the best pastimes and hobbies in the world. But also, it's just unfortunate. And then the other one that kind of irks me a little bit is the classic, got a bonsai. It could be any species, but the rocks are glued on top.
Oh,
I haven't seen this very often. I used to see it all the time. Like,
it's gotten better.
5 years ago, there was nothing but bonsai trees with rocks glued on top. So,
step one: remove rocks that are glued on top. You don't have you don't have to repot it. Take off the glued on rocks.
Yeah, and check for the bottom for drainage. But let's get into our little list of things. So let's say you got an actual bonsai, like a living plant. For example, at the nursery here, we sell either a juniper or an elm tree, and it comes in a pot. It's alive. It's got some size to it. It's actually a full grown out plant, and it comes with a pair of scissors, and it comes with a book. The book that we use over here is Jonas Dupuy's Little Book of Bonsai, which is a great beginner's book.
It's a great, that's a really good.
And then we supply a little thing of wire. Maybe sometimes it's like a wire, like 3 millimeter aluminum wire. It's like 10 feet of that. In my opinion, that's a great starter gift because they can do a little bit of everything. But on this list that we got, what's the first thing that we start out looking for?
I think the first thing you need to know before you do anything is what kind of tree you have. So you need to identify your tree. Is it a tropical tree? Is it a temperate tree? And that's going to determine what kind of care you need, because both of these are going to be totally different. And from there, I believe your number one goal is just to keep it alive through the winter. Winter's not a great growing season for bonsai. I think, until next spring, summer, keeping it alive is your main goal. So a lot of first time bonsai are ficus, Fukian
Yeah, there you
tea,
go.
juniper, elm, like you said,
Then,
maples. I think those are kind of sometimes a jade, a portulacaria.
yeah.
Uh,
We see sometimes azaleas, but azaleas are usually done for like Mother's Day because that's when they're blooming.
or a gardenia. I've seen a lot of the gardenias, like the plant, like 1-800-Flowers, and those other ones. People be like, "Here's a bonsai."
Don't gardenias flower sometimes in the fall?
Yeah, they'll flower fall over winter sometimes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that would make them charming as like a beginner's bonsai plant. I can think of a list of trees that I would love to be someone's first bonsai, but that's not
What would you
always going to be the
recommend?
case.
What are your recommendations for first bonsai?
So whenever people come in here, you have to keep in mind, I'm in zone 9A, 9B. We're always on the fence. We're tilting on it. It's just like how the year goes. But for my zone in the United States of America, I always recommend a bald cypress, a winged elm, a Humus alata, or a water elm, a Plantar aquatica, which those three trees are all natives and they're going to do really well in this range. And then also they're deciduous. So when you give somebody a gift, those trees are usually the last ones to be picked, especially whenever the person giving the gift also isn't really filled in on what bonsai can and is, like what it can be and what it is in retrospect. And so they're like, I don't want to give my loved one like a dead looking plant.
Yeah.
And so that's why, yeah, it's sick, it's dead. The fall color doesn't look like fall color to them. It looks kind of like, and usually by Christmas time, most of the trees have dropped most of their leaves. And so unfortunately, my favorite recommendations for my range would just not, cut the cheese. So, but then you go on and like, okay, if you want something that's going to be a better one, I would say the Procumbens nana. That's kind of just like the Mr. Miyagi tree is what I call it. And that tree is pretty tough. So that would be a decent one. It automatically has the look that most people are looking for. But as it trickles down from there, I would say like a Ficus microcarpa, the tiger bark, or any of its variants would do great. And then also the Fukian tea is a fair. I think Fukian teas are a little bit more challenging than a Ficus.
Yeah,
Ficus is a pretty durable. And then from there, like, yeah, the portulacaria. And the portulacaria, some people look at that one and they're like, oh, that's cute, but it doesn't have like that rugged
right. Yeah.
that.
It just looks like a succulent. So it can be hard to envision as a mature bonsai.
Yeah.
But they're an easy tree and they're pretty cool. So
and if you guys are first time listeners and you are interested in a good beginner piece of material, I would probably say at the top of the list, I would probably put portulacaria there. Just because it can take a lot of abuse and be, things done to it like out of season. And it's a pretty broad ranged tree. Obviously it's tropical, so it can't take freezing. And a lot of people in the wintertime, they're like, oh, I love my tree, so I'm going to keep it inside. Go over to like Little Jade Bonsai on Instagram. He's been on our show in the past. We've interviewed him. And he's got great examples of what you can do with that species, and they look great. So, but yeah, those are good options. But I think it's like 95% of the time it's going to be a Procumbens nana juniper.
Yeah.
And then the other 5% of the time it's going to be a Japanese maple, which is very weird to me. I see that a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah. I see a lot of ficus and a lot of juniper. I think that's a lot of what you can find in the big box stores, especially.
Yep.
And yeah, so I think the trick is once you know if it's a tropical tree or a temperate tree, that's going to tell you what to do next. And so again, this is going to depend really where you live, right? So if you're in a temperate zone, it's cold outside. If you're in a tropical zone, it's warm outside. So that's going to determine whether you want to keep your tree inside or outside for the remainder of winter. And so generally speaking, bonsai are outdoor trees. But if you get something for Christmas and it's already freezing and snowy outside, but your tree is actively growing, or it's been in a greenhouse, or it's been in the store for a month, like you're not going to want to just put it outside. So this is like the only case where I would suggest keeping even your juniper, or, you know, something that, you know, is maybe borderline temperate. Maybe keep that indoors, just because you can't shock it by putting it right out in the snow. If you're somewhere where Evan is, you might be able to stick it outside, and that would be preferred. But if you're in a northern climate, somewhere where it's cold, that tree I would probably keep indoors.
Yeah.
Until the spring, at which case you can acclimate it and move it outside.
Yeah. And beginners, I know that like beginners' intuition is always like, I'm going to keep my bonsai inside. So some like you just said, sometimes, you know, okay, that worked out. But now as we get further along here, and if you are listening to this episode, we can help you out. So junipers, this is what I get from the nursery a lot. I get a lot of people who are like, okay, I'm buying this juniper for my loved one. How do I keep it alive until I give it to them? I tell them exactly what they need to know. For my range, you can keep junipers outside, just with no worries. I mean, we have light freezes. Yeah. We have a hard freeze for us is like 28 degrees, which is a joke in most places.
Yeah.
I always tell people, like, the juniper is going to be just fine. Nothing's going to hurt this thing's feelings.
Yeah.
In your range in Michigan, it gets a little bit colder.
Yeah. This year, it's not that cold. So you might be able to stick a juniper right outside. Any tropical, do not keep your tropicals indoors for the winter. If you're well below freezing and you've been below freezing for a long time and you're getting something like a juniper that's not acclimated to it, either slowly acclimate it to being cold or keep it inside until the springtime.
Yep.
So the only time I will ever tell you to do that. 95%, 99% of the time, I'm going to tell you to put your juniper outside. But
worst case scenario,
if you have any tropical, keep it indoors.
Yeah. Keep it outdoors unless it's freezing outside. And for a temperate or juniper, I would say below freezing, just bring it indoors for the night and then put it back outside as soon as the temperature goes back up above freezing. For tropicals,
that way you should be able to acclimate it too, and eventually just leave it outdoors, I think.
Yeah. Over the course of like a month or so, if it starts showing you signs of distress, then obviously, and unfortunately with junipers, usually when they show signs of distress, it might be a little bit worse off.
It's already gone.
Yeah. But anyway, let's not talk about that just yet. But with the tropicals, my rule of thumb with my range, because I'm a little bit more humid and the days tend to be like a roller coaster here. Like it was 30, for example, it was 31 this morning, and it'll reach probably about 70 degrees during the middle of the day. So I tell people, as soon as it's above 40 degrees, it's very, very important for more temperate tropical ranges. 40 degrees, put your tropical back outside. It'll be fine. In fact, some tropicals need that kind of cooler weather to help them kind of wind down.
Yeah, they do go through kind of a dormant period or a slow period, even though they stay evergreen. Yeah.
The low light will actually slow them down too. So even though I have a lot of, we have our greenhouse over here at the nursery has a gas heater finally installed in it, and it's keeping the temperature above 50. They still won't grow nearly as aggressively as they would if it was in the middle of summer, when we have, the sun comes up at 6 o'clock in the morning and doesn't go down until like almost 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening. It's insane in the middle of summer. But now the sun comes up at like 7 and goes down at 5. So that length of the day puts them into a natural dormancy anyway. Just work your way into it with your tree. Light is very important. That's the next thing on the list. So tell us about light.
Yeah. So if you're going to keep your tree inside, so if you have, if you're living in a freezing cold climate and you have to keep something like a juniper indoors, or if you're anywhere that's too cold to keep your tropical outside, you want to either keep that in the brightest window you have, or add a supplemental light. And so what kind of light you want is a grow light, full spectrum grow light. You can get these for like $20 at any big box store. You can find little individual grow lights on Amazon for like $10. You can even just get a grow bulb and put it in one of your like desk lamps and stick your tree under it. I would recommend anywhere from 8 to 12 hours of supplemental light throughout the winter, and this is going to just keep your plant healthier. Don't be shocked if any of your tropicals drop leaves, because they will drop leaves for a light change. So if you go from really bright to really dark, they'll drop their leaves and put out leaves that are more adapted to shade. Or if there's a big temperature change, they'll drop their leaves and put out a new set of leaves. So if you end up getting yellowing and falling leaves, usually it's fine. It's just a light or temperature situation. So, but I would definitely recommend, if you're keeping any of your plants inside, to give them some kind of supplemental light. It will be the best for them.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that we're talking towards like, oh, well, it's growing pretty well inside, and then like spring and summer comes around and you just like, I'll just keep it inside because I love having my tree inside.
Right. This is just to keep it alive through this winter. And if it's a tropical, you'll probably want to bring it inside again next winter. But we're trying to just get you into springtime, into the growing season when you can take your trees outside. Yeah.
And all of your trees will grow a lot more with ease, giving them an actual light source, and they'll be able to actually store energy, grow healthy foliage. And I mean, because being in your house, it's kind of like being in a cave. And sometimes I know that some people use UV for like certain rooms, depending on what they're doing. Or like, it just depends on how your house is lit. But anytime that you have a regular, just like fluorescent bulb, it means nothing to the tree. It can't do anything with that. So yeah, light. I mean, when people ask me, oh, I just bought this, for example, like a bald cypress, and I'm like, how much light do I give this? I was like, and I always think to myself, how much light does a bald cypress need? Yeah. Like that's it's an outstanding amount of light. But when it's dormant, like if you're one of those people that got a deciduous tree for Christmas and it's got no leaves on it, then the amount of light doesn't really matter. I mean, that tree can live in the shade for X amount of months and then be fine. As long as it doesn't get sopping wet and then start developing fungus. Oh, hey, Carmen, did I tell you about Bonsai Central yet?
No, I don't think you have.
Oh, I think I might have mentioned it a few other times, but it's going to be May 3rd through 5th in 2024 in St. Louis, Missouri. It's basically the national show, but it's going to be Central America, and it's going to be an awesome show with cash awards and prizes. There's going to be a professional bonsai show and a kusamono show as well.
Ooh.
With the presentation during dinner for rewards and whatnot. But if you want to submit a tree, I think you have to submit 2 to 4 photos, and you need a brief description of your tree and send it over to the contact form at bonsaicentral.com. That's bonsai-central.com. But I think there's going to be vendors there too. Do you know what vendors were included? Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I heard that it's going to be something like 25 plus of the best vendors from around the country. So like including nurseries, potters, stand makers, tool suppliers, and all of that.
But like specifically, I thought I heard that there was going to be American potters. Like,
oh yeah, totally. Yeah, now Tochu Take is going to be there. Vicky Chamberlain, Eli Atkins of Waldo Street Pottery, April Grigsby, Roy Minari, and Byron Merrick. Sellers of imported Japanese and antique Chinese pots are going to be there too.
That's amazing. I mean, there must be like a pretty good lineup for this show as far as like their headliners. There should be some really good bonsai artists. Do you have any idea who that might be? I think I might have heard about Bjorn, but there's some other ones, right?
Oh yeah, Bjorn's going to be there. Tyler Sherrod as well. Maria Hayek, Andrew Robson, Maro Stemberger, and Young Cho.
Oh.
I think there's going to be workshops, show walkthroughs, critiques, all of that stuff.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. There should be somewhere to go on bonsai-central.com, and you can fill out the opportunities to do workshops with these professionals. They have really great material, I've heard. It's going to be stuff like twisted junipers and old fused maples and really awesome pieces of material for Young's Kosumono class. So I think if you guys are interested, y'all should go check out bonsai-central.com and see if you can register for the show, sign up for workshops if they're still available. But I'll definitely be there this year.
Awesome. That's sweet.
Yeah, thank you, Bonsai Central, for sponsoring our show. Our next point is water.
Yeah. So when you have growing trees inside is so much more complicated than growing trees outside. You just run into so many more problems because you don't have the same kind of climate that's, your trees interacting with essentially a fake climate. So watering, a lot of times the instructions on a big box bonsai will be like water once a week or whatever, and that's not going to work. What you need to do is like water your tree thoroughly. And that means like put it in the sink, run water through it, whether it's your tap water or filtered water or whatever kind of water you're going to use. Run water through your pot until it's coming out of the bottom and is thoroughly soaked. Let your plant get dry to the touch. The soil get dry, like pretty dry to the touch, not like sandy dry, but like mostly dry, and then water it again. So you're going to have to figure out how much water your plant is using over time. It's not a schedule. Your plant's going to change based on how it's growing, where it's located, if it's above a heat vent, if it's not above a heating vent. So soak your tree, figure out how long it takes to dry out, check it every day. Maybe check it twice a day if it's really going. I've never had an indoor tree that's needed water more than once a day, but be sure to check it when it starts to dry out. That's when you're going to want to water it again. You don't want to keep it wet all the time because then you're going to get fungal issues, fungus gnats. Your tree's going to get unhealthy and very unhappy. I think overwatering is probably one of the number one killers of indoor houseplants in general, especially over winter.
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to kind of go back to that you mentioned a little bit earlier was watering in the sink. And one of the things that it could be that watering in the sink, obviously getting water however you can get to the plant is going to be the most vital thing. But the delivery of the water for me, whenever I talk to people who are watering their trees for the first time, if you're going to water with a straight stream, you want to watch out for a few things. You don't want to blast the soil out of your pot. You don't want to create a hole in the root system where you can see literally bare roots, like fibrous roots. That's awful because those roots will die instantly when they dry out. And then also, you want to make sure that you're not just watering that one side, depending on what type of soil your tree is in. If it's in a peat moss type soil, and peat moss is terrible about drying out and becoming hydrophobic, where it won't absorb, it'll just kind of go around. And then also, if it is saturated, you might run into a situation where you water one side and only one side of the pot will get wet. So when you water, I think best case scenario is getting yourself like a watering can or using the sprayer, like the sprayer.
Yeah, like the little, I like to use the little sprayer on my house plants. Yeah,
the sprayer that comes off your kitchen sink with the shower head. That's so much better. You get full coverage and soak it.
Yeah. If you're going to use your actual sink faucet, take it down to a trickle and, make sure you get all the bits of the pot. But I do recommend doing this in a sink or bathtub so that you can get like a full, it doesn't have to be that water, but that will let you get the whole thing wet and let the water run out without worrying about getting it on your carpet or whatever. There was something else. If you do have a situation where you have that peat moss or whatever in there that's really hydrophobic, you could fill up a dish of water and set your tree in it and it will suck it up from the bottom and that'll get that rehydrated for you so that you can start top watering again.
Yeah. Just, I can't stress it enough that I feel like watering is like one of the biggest downfalls of, first time, and also people say or ask me, how often do I water my tree?
Yeah, I don't know. When it's dry.
It's really hard to tell, yeah.
You got to figure it out, and it's a little bit of a learning curve. So pay attention to it. Start with it soaking wet, and then let it dry down and watch how fast it dries. Then you'll be able to kind of, over about a month, you'll be able to figure out kind of what your schedule is. But just remember that's going to change with your tree and the season.
So, watering, lights, and also the next thing that we should talk about, and this will probably be a little bit more important as we move into the springtime, which for some people, springtime for me is in 2 months. For some people, springtime is in 5 to 6 months. Yeah.
May, June.
Some people have shorter growing seasons. So, but fertilizer is kind of like the next point that needs to be made on keeping your tree healthy. Because, I mean, that's the only thing that feeds the tree. That's the only way you can grow leaves and shoots and roots and layers of bark. I mean, that's what makes the tree develop. So tell us about some fertilizer practices.
Well, sometimes if you're getting a tree from an actual bonsai nursery, sometimes you will already have round colored ball, either like yellow or green. And that's a slow release fertilizer. In which case you don't necessarily want to add anything else to it that is probably going to get you through to your growing season. If there's no fertilizer on your tree, you can go a couple different routes. You can go slow release, which is, again, like the Osmocote, or they've got a bunch of other kinds of pellets specifically for bonsai. So essentially what happens with the slow release is you apply it once as you water. Some of it is released each time that you water. And so your plant is constantly getting this kind of slow feed of fertilizer. The other option is a liquid fertilizer like Miracle Grow or Fish Emulsion, or there's, as many different kinds of liquid fertilizers as there are opinions about which liquid fertilizer to use. And so if you're going to do a liquid fertilizer, you can either do it weekly. So a week solution of fertilizer, about half strength every week, or you can do it full strength every other week. You can do this in addition to slow release, but I think, especially with it being winter and your trees aren't actively growing as much, probably pick either a bit of slow release or a week solution of fertilizer every week or every 2 weeks, just to keep it, kind of maintenance mode until you can get it outside. How do you feel about that?
It's pretty in depth of just like basic needs.
Yeah.
Of how to fertilize and stuff. And and
you can do that with your orchids and other houseplants too.
Yeah. And we're only talking about synthetic.
Well, I mean, you could do organics.
Yeah.
As well.
And that's kind of one of the things that also comes up a lot is this bonsai food or is this just plant food?
Well, technically it's not food, but
yeah, technically it's
nutrients, but
but it translates for layman's terms for people who are,
right. If you're going to go to the store, you're going to buy some plant food.
I'm going to be what the kids say, dead ass. I didn't know when I got into bonsai. So this is kind of one of the things is like, get into bonsai, never had potted plants or successfully grown potted indoor plants of any kind. And bonsai gets separated in your mind and you're like, oh, well, this is something else. It doesn't need fertilizer like that. And I think that's one of the bigger downsides. Watering is usually the biggest issue. And then when the watering part's figured out and then the tree's not like growing right and you're like, I'm watering it. What's wrong? What am I doing? Fertilizer always comes into it. And it just, in my brain, it didn't connect for several years. That honest truth, when I first started doing bonsai over a decade ago, I was watering my trees, loving my trees, and then I would fertilize them and go, oh, well, they're hungry. That's where it's like food. It translates to, I'm going to feed my fish or I'm going to feed my dog or whatever other living thing. And it translates differently for plants. Because like you said, the best way to think about it is we're introducing nutrients, individual components that they need for different times of the year. And it's just, it's a steep learning curve for a lot of people who get into bonsai. And that's why another one of the things kind of going back to the species selection, you kind of want to get a species that doesn't really have special requirements like, pH levels are important to this plant or fertilizing with too much nitrogen during a certain time of the year is bad for this plant. You want to get a plant that doesn't really care too much about those requirements. Yeah. And that'll kind of clear up a lot of your fertilizer questions and needs early on until you've, decide that you want to move up to the next level and get something that's a little bit more finicky. It's like going from a bald cypress here in my range and then finding out that there are vaccinium that grow wild here that are amazing specimen. Not specimen, but they are a specimen to be made into bonsai. And they have blueberry plant requirements, which are chaotic.
Very different than something like a bald cypress.
Exactly.
For sure.
The requirements for those fertilization and treatment during each time of the year is way different from bald cypress, which is just like that. And you guys made a joke on the previous episodes. It always comes up. You always hear me say that. It's probably going to be like if Matt went through and like clipped out all the times I said bald cypress, it would be the most said species and probably word likely. Apart from the a and all the other words that I use. But yeah, it's just that species almost doesn't care what you do to it. But for a vaccinium, you got to be really careful. You can't just go in and willy-nilly do anything. Yeah. And then when it comes to like synthetic versus organics, I always try to steer people just straight to synthetics first, because organics that's where you get complex.
Synthetic is much more straightforward. It's the easiest route to go in the beginning.
And it works right now.
It works right now. It will get you through this period, through this learning curve until you can spend more time learning and researching and doing the things you want to do.
So far we've gone through how to identify it, how to keep it over winter, the light, the water, and the fertilizer. So once all these, and that's kind of like how I would say this is the best way. There's a great just like start from the bottom of like horticulture potted practices. So stuff in the
number
ground.
One, you're just trying to keep your plant alive.
Yeah.
Keep it alive. You can do it. I believe in you.
In a pot, this is one thing I want to say real quick. A plant in a pot versus a plant in the ground is drastically different. A potted plant is a hostile environment for a plant automatically. It's just, that's not the way nature intended it. And as humans, we want them in containers, and bonsai is like kind of like the biggest offender of that. Is like, I want my tree in the pot, and I want it in my hands. And so like it's not the most comfortable thing for a plant, like majority of the time. So
right.
And I compare this every once in a while. You hear me compare this to like how an engine runs, like a motor in your car. So if you have gas, oxygen, and like basically your spark, that's kind of the components of how an engine runs. For a plant, it's light, water, fertilizer.
That's a good analogy, actually.
Yeah,
and it makes sense too. Like with the engine, you have to do maintenance. You have to change out your fluids. You got to do all the things. Look at me talking about engines like I know a thing. Yeah.
Carmen's going to go bust her knuckles up after this podcast is over now. Go change the oil in the lawnmower. But no, but yeah, without one of those components, something's going to fail. But once we get to that point, then what I'm leading up to there is, once we get to that point, then your plant starts growing, and you're like, oh, okay, now it's getting to a point where, for some newer people to bonsai, they don't know how to gauge growth rate, and so they're just like, it's out of control, or it grew like 2 leaves. So
this podcast is supported by Bonsai Bar, the beginner bonsai workshop popping up in breweries all across the Northeast. Bonsai Bar is 2 hours of tiny tree goodness disguised as a night out with friends. Come grab drinks, create a new tree, and watch as your friends and family get the bug for bonsai. Bonsai Bar is always looking for teachers and assistants, and you listen to this podcast, so you're probably already qualified. Bring your knowledge out to the bar. Apply today. Find event tickets, contact info, and more at bonsaibar.com.
But it does, maintenance-wise, bleed up to one more thing that we do need to talk about before we get to like how to prune and how to shape is pest control.
Oh, God. Inside pests on your plants are the worst. I feel like anytime you bring in a plant for the winter time or you introduce a plant inside, they're just going to get bugs. Like,
Yeah.
Especially trees, especially if they've been outside and you bring them in, they're like, ah, and then the bugs are like, ooh, yum. So I think your most common household pests are spider mites, aphids,
Yep.
and mealybug. Sometimes you'll see fungus gnats, and that's, when you have wet soil and it looks like there's little gnats flying around. That's a signal that you're watering too much. Those fungus gnats aren't actually going to hurt your plant. They're just kind of a nuisance to have around your house.
It makes you feel kind of gross a little bit, like having fruit
Yeah,
flies.
you're like, oh God. Ugh. But yeah, spider mite, aphid, and mealybug. Ugh. So should we talk about each one, or should we just talk about general? Just how do we want to do it?
Keep it light. Just how to generalize, how to take care of that, because like most insecticides will kind of eradicate all of them as a group.
Yeah, this is true.
So you know a lot more about the pest side, and we have done an episode our last year, I guess you can say, where you did kind of go over that. If you guys want to refer back to it, but those conversations will come up. It is a very important topic that a lot of people don't talk about.
Yes. So when you're inside, when you're dealing with house plants, you don't really want to use the same kind of chemicals you would use outside. Those can be pretty toxic, and you don't really want to bring them into your house. So I think one of the easiest things to do is just rinse your plant off in the sink or the shower. Like you can remove a lot of spider mites, a lot of aphid, a lot of mealybug with a good steady stream of water. So if you're going to do something like this, you want to protect your soil so that it doesn't run all over the place and come out in the pot. But you can spray it in your leaves. Be sure to get top bottom. The other thing you can use is a soap, which you can buy pre-made. Sometimes I will mix a little bit of like Dawn dish detergent in with, I think Dawn and Ivory work pretty well with a little bit of water in a spray bottle and squirt my leaves down. And then rinse that off under the sink or in the shower, whatever, rinse that off. With mealybug, they're going to look real cottony. With aphid, you're going to see these little bugs and the sticky stuff on your leaves. You can also manually remove. Oh, scale is the other one.
Scale's a little more difficult to get rid of.
Scale's a little bit trickier. That one you might want to manually remove. So get your fingernail out and get them off the leaves if you can. If you want to use something like a systemic insecticide or a harsher insecticide, take your plant outside for the day. Pick a nice day, squirt it down outside, let it dry before you bring it back in. But a lot of times you can get away with just a lot with dish soap, water, or insecticidal soap, even just manually removing stuff, which is gross, but you can do it. Alcohol and a cotton swab, that works well too, especially for scale. You can kind of scrape them off with a little Q-tip with some alcohol on it. Pro tip.
And one of the things too is, you notice we're talking about the plant being indoor. Once we get this plant acclimated outdoor, a lot of your issues with bugs and pests and stuff like this will be taken care of. Depending on the species, if it does well in your range, a lot of these issues will clear up because of you'll have, bugs higher on the food chain will take care of some of these.
There'll be natural predators. Your plant will be stronger and less susceptible to attack from bugs.
And then if you're watering your trees on the days that you water, like every day when you get into the hotter part of the year, or every once in a while during the cooler times of the year, I will do this every once in a while. I'll take my sprayer hose. I'll use a shower setting on there. I always use shower anyway, but I have to specify that. But use a shower, not mist.
You don't use stream or blast.
No, I don't use the turbo
power blast
on my hose when I water my trees. But every once in a while I will kind of do like a because I use a very, I forgot what you call it, but because we do have like dram products in our store where we have the number of little holes that you can get for a lighter stream. You switch over to like your just lower count, and it's a little bit more of a brisk shower. I go from the underside, and I'll do this during winter to blast off old foliage that's just clinging on for too long on my deciduous trees, and then my my pines and junipers and other evergreens, I'll go into there and just give them a nice little quick, 5-10 second bath to blast off bugs and pests that are just kind of, because they're in the winter, they're looking for somewhere to hang out and fester. So getting in there and blasting stuff out of there, that works pretty well too.
Yeah. I've had luck with that as well.
What, blasting them out?
Oh yeah, especially spider mites, because a lot of times if you use, you don't 100% do not use a systemic insecticide on spider mites, because it actually makes them stronger and you'll have more of them.
Oh yeah.
If you're going to use something on a spider mite, use a contact spray or a miticide. Don't use the systemic. They love it. They'll breed 100 times faster and you'll have super mites. So yeah.
So it's almost like don't spray them, but do.
Yeah. Get them with water. If that's not working, try a miticide or some kind of insecticidal soap or contact killer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for funguses and stuff, that can be the result of overwatering, or if the species has a very particular fungus that attacks it. That's it. That was kind of reminds me of talking about these pests and diseases too. It's like, if you got a good beginner's book, I had mentioned earlier Jonas's book. There are a lot of other beginner's books on the market. Usually, you have a good book, a good bonsai beginner's book when you flip through, and there is a pests and funguses section, and they show you photos of it. Yeah, that means that they actually put some thought into the care of the trees, and it'll give you an identifying factor, because you can Google, what is this on my leaf or on my tree? Or you go to a Facebook group and you're took a picture of your tree, and you'll get hey guys, what is this? And you'll get 100 different answers and a different, ways to treat it. It's just a good book that tells you about pests and diseases straight on, especially I don't think a lot of people will do this, especially beginner bonsai people, but get a pest and diseases book from college level pest and diseases. Yeah. That's going to be one of the best ways. And we've talked about this in the past, Carmen, you've mentioned this, that pest control has kind of been the same for a while. We got that part figured out. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a really great resource online. I think it's the Pacific Northwest Plant and Disease Management Handbook or something. You can type in the species of plant you have, and then it'll list all of the options for pests and diseases, and you can click on them and they've got pictures and that kind of thing. So that's a really good resource. But yeah, if you're running into a fungal issue, 99% of the time it's an airflow problem and a overwatering problem. You can try a fungicide on your plant, but I think more likely try removing that section of plant if it's really bad, or just changing your water, trying to get some more airflow and giving just give the plant a little bit more space.
Yeah. But yeah, but
with a lot of these, you don't really have fungal issues. I think it's mostly you would find that maybe on a juniper or something like that. But a lot of the ficus and stuff, they don't really have a lot of fungal issues inside, which is nice.
Yeah. Now that I think we've gotten through, light, water, fertilizer, pests, and everything's growing great. I like how you put on the notes here. It says, just don't do anything. Don't try to go overboard, do anything crazy.
Don't touch it.
Yeah, just let it grow.
Let it get strong. Yeah. If you have a tree, it's inside over the winter. Winter is never its primary growing season. Even if you have a tropical, this is not its primary growing season. It's great that it's growing. It means it's alive. It's doing things. Let it get that strength. Let it get strong, let it grow. You can cut it later when you move it outside. Unless you're, intermediate moving up and when to cut it, I would suggest for most beginners to just let things grow, let it acclimate, let it get strong, and then address, foliage maintenance in the springtime once you move it outside.
Yeah. A lot of people don't get to see the moments that we're talking about when it comes to bonsai on Instagram and Facebook, online, pictures and books and stuff. You see those trees when they're at their best and they look great. They've just been pruned or wired, but they don't really show that time when the tree is just growing out, or it looks ragged, or it's not necessarily a bonsai just yet. And so this is one thing that's kind of hard for a lot of beginners to wrap their head around, is when the tree gets to a point where it's starting to grow and you're like, I can't let it do that. And then you're cutting off a shoot. And then it does it again because you cut it back, and it really does need to grow that shoot out to build resources, to build root system, to gather whatever it needs to keep becoming healthy. And you keep trimming that shoot off, and then eventually you're like, I tried my best to keep my bonsai in shape, and it kept growing, and then I trimmed it back, and I thought I was doing the right thing, and it weakened it, and it starts dying, and you're like, oh, maybe what am I doing wrong now? And that's, I think, it's the best thing to say to a lot of people is let it grow. And I will go on so there's like the yin and the yang, like the good, the devil on the shoulder and the angel on the shoulder. This is good, let it grow. Bad, tell somebody that their tree needs to be put in the ground or put into a bigger pot, or it's not good enough yet. That's kind of usually the biggest disheartening factor, is when you go on the online forums and stuff, and you keep on hearing me call back to this. We've said this on previous episodes. Be careful with online forums and Facebook groups that you go into, because some people will give you kind of misdirection on this, and it's like, oh, my tree's growing. And then someone looks at that picture and they're like, but it's just not good enough. This is, put it in the ground.
People can be really mean.
Yeah, people can be mean. So you'll learn that as you get into it. We are a nice show, except for our critiques. But we are a nice show. We want everybody to succeed. We want everybody to have a good time. Bonsai, in my opinion, like I said earlier, is one of the best things you can do as far as a pastime or hobby. So it's very rewarding. And you don't want to tell people that, they got their tree growing, and then you're like, put it in the ground, and you think to yourself, you're like, what's the point of even having it in this pot?
Don't put it in the ground.
Don't put it in the ground. Just let it grow. Yeah. I've grown trees in pots for a very good amount of time and seen them go from as big as my pinky to nearly as big as my wrist. And that kind of stuff that's kind of what it's about in some aspects. Sometimes people love container grown only trees, and some people love, like, I've got a little bit of both. I've got stuff I'm growing in the ground, cutting it in the ground, and I've got stuff that I've grown from seed in a pot, and I'm just growing it from. It's a challenge. Everything's a challenge. It's like grow it from a seed in a pot its entire life. That's interesting. But
growing in the ground is really kind of an advanced technique, because you really have to know when to root prune, when to top prune, how to manage it. It's a whole different story. Yeah.
And leave the growing to the growers, like people like me who operate a growing nursery, or John Aids in Left Coast Bonsai. John, he's an awesome guy. He's doing growing operations in his part of the United States, and that's what we do. We take the trees from seedlings, from cuttings, throw them in the ground, grow them out, and then when we pot them up, they should be good enough for a beginner to take that piece of material and grow it in the container for the remainder of that tree's existence and get something that they need. So, but let it grow. Let it grow out. Watch videos online, read books, gather as much information as possible. So,
for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think you mentioned something really, really important, that people only see bonsai like show ready, display ready. Like bonsai aren't meant to be kept in that shape all the time. You might be surprised walking into a professional's yard in May when the maples are extending. You know what I mean? Like, the maples look ridiculous. We let them grow until they've hardened off. We don't usually trim extensions until June or July. So sometimes we'll be cutting a foot off of a maple, off a maple shoot, or 6 inches or 3, like, we let the pines, we don't prune them till the fall. The hemlocks get 3 times as dense in the summertime. We don't prune them till now. So the junipers are going to go bananas. That's a summer and fall thinning exercise. It's like, so late winter, early spring into summer, let your tree grow. the time for pruning it and siling it is later in the season. You don't have to keep it in shape all the time. If you do, you will weaken your tree.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is a super, super important point for beginners, I think.
Speaking of things being just...
And that, yeah, like you said... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Because you said like the maples will be all blown out and the hemlocks will be super duper dense. And it makes me think about my yard right now is a combination of trees. I'm still waiting for them to give up like their fall color into their actual like leaves are starting to fall off. And so some of my trees are just half fall color, half bare. Yeah. Really long extensions on developed trees, and you would walk, like you say, you walk into a professional's yard and you're like, what is going on here? You're like, is he letting his trees slowly die? They look awful, you know? And so like my bald cypresses have that brown foliage on them right now, but me and you had talked about this earlier. It's like some of these trees, when they hit that fall color and stuff, it's like, I want to see that fall color into that dry leaf color for a longer time than some people think. And it does look a little ridiculous sometimes. And it's that appreciation of the season for like beech and hornbeams will get the brown crumbly leaves. And everybody's like, what is that? Why did you leave that on there? You know? Yeah.
The beeches will hold on to their leaf. You have to force those puppies off.
Yeah.
They're never going to drop them. But yeah, I mean, black pines in the fall look hilarious, like especially when they're unbalanced. You know, they've got needles that are sticking up above the old, the new needles, or the old needles are twice as long as this year's needles, and so they just look silly until you can go through them and clean them up.
Our black pines they do like a shed this time, so we have like yellow needles mixed in with green needles.
Yeah, we've got some. They'll sometimes shed some of them, but most of them are manual removal, for at least as far as the ones that are developed, because you do so much plucking in the springtime as well. But so then, like you said, this is a great time to study, to look at books, look at pictures, figure out where you want to go with your tree. So is your tree so young that you're really in a development stage, that you're just kind of growing it out and creating initial structure? Does it already have some kind of style? Are you just going to maintain it? So figure out what you want to do this next season. Find a local club, find a teacher, find a class, whether it's online or in person, something like that. So you have somebody to go to for questions. And then once your weather starts to warm up, you're going to want to transition it outside. Yep. And at that point, that's when you would consider repotting, I think. A lot of times you don't need to repot.
There's a point that I would really like to kind of put my 2 cents in on, because I saw that on there and I think this is extremely important. I had someone come in not too long ago, and we had a juniper in a training pot, and they really wanted it in a ceramic pot. They were like, it doesn't look like bonsai to me. And I'm like, well, it technically is and isn't bonsai at the same time, because this is a beginner's plant. But, you know, I had to go through and, you know, it's like the customer's always right kind of situation in this, but also
the customer's wrong.
Well, the customer's always right, even in bonsai. But
no, they're not.
Well, I go in and I told the customer that, you know, we can put it in the pot that you want, but it's going to have to be the same size. We're not going to be able to do anything out of the ordinary. We're not getting into a smaller pot. We're not getting into a different style of pot. The root system has to match that. And your tree is going to look, because it was a smaller juniper, I was like, the pot's going to look big. But that was what the customer wanted. So we did. That's fine. And so and it's a question I get a lot from a lot of people, is like, as soon as they get their tree, especially if it's in a grow out pot, we have a lot of that here at the nursery, and they're like, can I go ahead and repot this now? You know, or is my loved one okay to repot this as soon as they open it on Christmas Day and they have some downtime this week? And
don't touch it.
Yeah, don't do anything. And what you want to do is, when you get to the springtime and you know your species, and you know when it's supposed to be repotted, consult with your local bonsai professional. I know there's some people who it's unfortunate where they just don't have a professional garden or a bonsai nursery near them. But there are a lot of places where you can find a professional nursery, either reach out to them, give them a phone call in your range. That's another thing I think a lot of people don't really take advantage of too is, for instance, let's say somebody lives in northern Louisiana and the only place they have to go in northern Louisiana, let's say they're in like Monroe. I think that's right. That's like 4 or 5 hours from me. And it's like, oh, am I going to drive 4 or 5 hours? And I've had a couple of people actually come down because they know that's like the only place. And unless they want to like drive somewhere, a little bit further, there's a couple of further spots, but it's totally acceptable to just call the nursery. I've had people call me and say, I have questions about bonsai. That's perfect. That's beautiful.
Yep.
Please call a professional that is within your range before you go into thinking about, I'm going to repot this tree. Getting some kind of insight either over the phone or even better, best is in person, because then they can see the tree, they can see the soil it's in, they can see the pot that's your ideal pot that you want to put your tree in, and you should get that consultation on your tree.
Absolutely. I mean, heck, even if you don't know who to call, like leave us a comment on Instagram, shoot us a DM,
yeah.
I don't know.
That's what we're here for.
Throw questions into my inbox. I don't care. I do that all the time. I always answer questions for people. I've got folks texting me, messaging me all the time. What the hell do I do?
Yeah.
Let me tell you.
So, that's part of the reason why when we put our show together, that we made sure that we had someone who deals with tropicals like Mike, someone who deals with a lot of temperate subtropicals like me, and somebody who deals with a little bit more of I guess you would say the colder range, alpine range stuff and evergreen stuff like Carmen does.
Hello.
And I mean, and we all arguably have a spectrum of experiences from traveling or working with preferred species or out of range species as well. So, not to say anything, but I mean, I guess our show is a good reference for going through and figuring things out.
We've got we got a nice wide variety of inputs here, so that can be really, really useful. And I mean, Evan and I text each other all the time. What am I doing? How do I do this? What do you think? So get some friends and
get some friends. Step one,
friends. God.
Get friends, just friends in general. And then step 2, find bonsai people. Yep.
But I think that's one of the other things beginners run into a lot. I mean, maybe not at Christmas time, but if you get something in the middle of the summer, you're excited and you have a new tree, you try to repot it and style it the same day that you bought it. And that's gonna set you way back. So a lot of patience is necessary. There's a kind of a big learning curve, but there's enough resources out there at this point that it's not as hard to find the information that you need. The other note I want to say about repotting is that it's going to depend what kind of soil your tree is in. If it was a collected tree and it's in field soil, if it's in potting soil, is it in bonsai soil? And that's also going to affect how you repot and what you do within repotting. So again, super important to consult a nursery, a bonsai professional, a local club, somebody who's got some experience as far as caring for bonsai goes.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
what else? We didn't even talk about tools and wiring. That comes later. That's for summertime and fall time.
Or you can refer to our bonsai tool bag episode that we did.
Heavy metal.
Yeah, the heavy metal episode where we talk about having intrusive thoughts about cutting ourselves on accident.
I concaved myself again the other day, but I caught myself before I closed it. So
you're like,
only a small cut.
I have a reaction time. Am I quick enough to get away from my own blade? But
you feel it on there, you got to move your thumb.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of going through the Discord for our Patreon. I see some things in here that I was scrolling through and I'm looking at an image that I'm questioning why it's even in here. I see a lot of Merry Christmas, a lot of Happy New Year, awesome stuff. Just looking to see if there was any listener questions that were posted in here. But that is something else to be said. If you guys have any more questions or would like to hear us answer stuff on air, we can easily take questions, critique trees. That's one of the things we love doing here. You can tag us on Instagram on your own feed if you would like our input. You can go to our comments on Instagram or Facebook. Facebook is less active now, to be honest, but go to our Instagram and leave comments on the Instagram, and we will answer questions and all those good, juicy things.
If you do become a patron, at our best bud level, you get access to the Discord with all three of us and all of our other patrons who are from literally all over the world, and you can offer advice and suggestions and help create that community that some of our beginners are looking for.
Yeah. But yeah, the most previous thing that I just remembered, it came all the way back around. I just remembered what I was trying to say earlier before we kicked the whole thing off. I went out. It's on our Instagram now, and I'm sure a lot of people have probably seen it that keep up with our Instagram or are in the Discord. I went out yesterday with Nate Murray of the Boot Bonsai. The boot. Louisiana is shaped like a boot. That's why we call it that. But yeah, Nate has been on a few of our previous episodes, so we're hoping to get him back on here fairly soon, because right now in Louisiana, it is Yamadori collecting season. And we went out into basically the swamp. It was more like a pond, but for a lot of people, this would be pretty swampy. There's a beautiful picture of me and Nate amongst a bunch of cypress knees on our Instagram right now. And then there's a little short video that me and Nate shot out in the wooded area where we're just kind of looking around, looking for material, explaining, doing our best to explain what to look for. But I will actually be doing, now that I just remembered as well, I will be doing a Yamadori hunting and collection kind of seminar type thing.
Expedition?
What was that?
An expedition? Will you be taking people out?
Yes, I will. So you can go to underhillbonsaistore.com, and under our workshops, I have a sign up. It's going to be a Zoom call. So if you're in Southeast United States and bald cypresses are prevalent in your range, or any other trees, I mean, a lot of my practices also pertain to like elms and hackberries and maples and all those other beautiful, wonderful deciduous trees and temperate trees that grow in my range. I'll be doing a class on how to collect them, how to properly take care of them, like aftercare practices, and then like the first several years of post-collection treatment of trees. Collecting trees in the Southeast is way different than, let's say, collecting on the East Coast in the Appalachians, or on the West Coast in the Rocky Mountains in the Cascades. Pulling trees here seems like a no-brainer to some people when it comes to collecting trees, but there are some things that I love to do this class every year where I just fill in people's gaps on knowledge on, like if we're going to pull a tree out of it, if we're going to pull a tree out of its environment, let's make it worth the time for both you and the plant.
Yeah.
Because we're doing it for pulling trees out of nature to create bonsai, not I'm trying to break down that whole line of I'm collecting because I want.
Yeah.
You should be collecting to honor the plant and create something special. So yeah, go over to underhillbonsaistore.com. You can register for that class. And you don't have to, there is an option to attend it in person here. But online is totally fine. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be doing and saying, you don't need to apply hands-on. It's going to be just kind of like a little nice lecture kind of thing with photos and video footage that I will have at on hand from me and Nate's collecting. But yeah, me and Nate pulled out two really nice cypresses yesterday. One would be suited for a very good formal upright, or even a informal kind of style, depending on how you grow the top back out. And then also I just collected one for fun that is going to be an amazing flat top bald cypress style. So that's something I did yesterday. Got my hands dirty and got down in the water again. It's something I haven't done in a while, and I miss doing that. So, but yeah.
Yeah, that was a fun post. I liked seeing that.
Yeah. And collecting season is different too, because it's going to change. It's going to be different in all parts of the world, all different ranges. I don't know I know Michael goes into the Cascades and collect. He used to collect. Do you know what time he did that? Like what time?
I think they do a lot of it in the fall. I think there's a window in the springtime as well, I think, but it's a little bit riskier. It's always riskier doing it in the spring because you're so close to the heat of summer that unless you really know what you're doing and have a good place to acclimate trees, it can be a little bit dicey. But fall is usually really pretty good.
Okay. Yeah. For the Southeast, because the window's so short, it's usually January to February for us here.
Yeah.
But yeah.
A lot of times too for us, there's snow in the mountains at this point, so you can't even get up there.
Yeah, so. Exactly.
But if you're in the lowland and it's still, not frozen, then go for it.
Mm-hmm. And so we usually do a bonsai word of the week. Do you have time for that?
I do.
Cool. I had one picked out. Oh, I know what I had picked out. I don't think we haven't talked about this one, but it's something that after I had Guy Guidry on a couple episodes back, he's come by the nursery recently and reintroduced not something that this isn't new to me, but it's something I feel like a lot of people don't think about when developing trees is line. I know I've talked about this with Takagari. Is kind of like it's the first space between the Nabari and the first branch. It tells you what the rest of the tree is going to do. But when it comes to line in the tree, and it's kind of like also it's like a little bit less of a formal term that a lot of people, you'll hear it in bonsai groups. You go to a bonsai club, you'll hear people say stuff like, this tree has good bones, or this tree has a beautiful Nabari, or
look at the line of that tree.
Look at the line of this tree. That's something that you'll hear. And for a while, when I started out, it was very confusing because I was like, what am I looking for here?
I don't see any lines.
Yeah, I don't see lines. I don't see what they're looking for exactly. But the line refers to if you were to take your tree, and this is a good way to do it. But yeah, line in a tree is a reference to if you took your tree, take a picture of your bonsai, and I added like a 2-dimensional perspective from the front, and take your drawing tool and draw from the roots up to the top of the tree. And if you can do that, if there's a clear line in the tree, that's what we're referring to. If you look at your tree and you've got a raw piece of material, or a tree that you're like kind of guessing, what is this tree? I don't know how to style trees. And then you go to draw that line on that tree and you just don't know where it is. That's one of the biggest issues that a lot of people have beginning with styling trees is where's the line of this tree?
Yep.
There could be one single line. Most conifers are built off of a single line. Deciduous trees can have multiple lines because they're goofy, and evergreens as well. So line is a very interesting way to look at it. But the reason why I brought it up with guys was we were chopping trees in the back. And the first thing he said, he's like, let's go find the line in these trees. We're referring to as to cut off stuff that's big, cut off stuff that doesn't have movement, cut off stuff that is just uninteresting, and cut off things that are causing issues for the tree in the future.
Yeah, line is a design term that you'll see a lot in painting and drawing.
That's a good reference. And
kind of, like it's kind of like a structural piece of, what's the line, what's the direction, what's the movement of this piece. A lot of times with bonsai, we're talking about the line of the trunk. And so if you're creating a bonsai, a lot of times you're kind of creating that line with your pruning cuts and you're trying to make an interesting line. A lot of times with the Yamadori, there already is a trunk line, and that's why you've collected it, because it has that interesting line. When you're creating your tree, Yamadori, or something you've been growing yourself, you want to find the most interesting line to, present as the front of your tree. It doesn't have to have the most movement, but it has to have the most interesting movement. So, it's a term that gets thrown around a lot without really always discussing what exactly it is. But a lot of time it's specifically your trunk line, kind of your overall movement of the tree, where the interest can be in the tree. And it's something that you can both create and something that is also natural. Sometimes a combination of the two. So that was good. Yeah, there's a lot of design words that we could really kind of deep dive into that unless you've been through an art class or two, you might not, have a good frame of reference for.
Yeah. Line also guides you through the image.
Mm-hmm.
It's another good way to look at it. Line gives you...
How does your eye move?
Yeah. It gives you...
Follows the line.
Starting point, and then where do you go from there? And most photos, a good line in like a photo or a painting will be something like, I started here and this pointed over here and now I'm pointed over there. And then I came back around the entire photo and I captured all the details that the person who took this photo or painted this image wanted me to see. And I kind of started back to the beginning again. In bonsai, usually the line goes up and then out in a direction because bonsai is is a little bit more, another way, like someone said it recently to me, is like more story driven. And so in Japanese culture, a lot of bonsai start from right to left because that's how they write. In American culture, we start from left to right. So it's very, very common to see a lot of bonsai trees because that's what we are comfortable with.
That's really interesting. I wonder if that's why we have more right to left trees.
I think it's both. And it's really funny because both of those things, like Japanese books, are back to front to us, but it's the other way around for them. Video games are another way to look at it. When you play Mario, which way does he go? He typically goes from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen. It is a Japanese game, but but they knew that to connect with a bigger market, that they could get people on board, because starting from the left and going to the right is kind of how we look at things in life, and like how things travel and time to us is like, it started over here, now it's over here. And that's kind of like, we don't want to get too deep into this conversation because this is a totally different conversation for art perspective and stuff. But yeah, that's why you'll see trees will always have the front, and then the line tells us which direction the tree is traveling. So it's a very interesting concept. And line, in my opinion, is the most important part of design. So
yeah, super important to have a nice line.
Yep. But yeah, that's a great little beginner bonsai word of the week. We always tell our listeners to take up the bonsai word of the week and try to use it in conversation with your bonsai friends or apply it to your trees. That's just kind of like one of the cornerstones of bonsai is line. And so
find your lines.
Yeah, define your lines and find your lines. But yeah, that'll bring us to towards the end of the show here. Did you have any closing remarks for this year or anything, Carmen?
I mean, I just think as far as this episode goes, if we missed something, let us know, either in the Discord or on Instagram. Let us know what other beginner stuff for, if you got a bonsai for Christmas, what are your other questions? What did we forget to talk about? Yeah. And then closing out the year, like 2023 has been an interesting one. 2024 is pretty exciting. There's a lot of cool shows, finishing up the apprenticeship. Like it's kind of an exciting year. So looking forward to all the other stuff that we get to do.
Yeah, we have a lot of special guests lined up for this year that I've already talked to, and we just got to get them on the schedule. I know we had in our past year, we went from, we had a couple of guests. It was like, oh, cool. And then all out of nowhere, our guests were just like crazy.
Bam, bam, bam. Yeah.
We just had some really cool guests just like back to back. And I was like, this is actually going really well. This year, I've got a couple of more guests that are coming up that I'm very excited to have on. People that I know, or people that I just met, or people that are just well known in the bonsai community and stuff. It's awesome to have this come around this year. So, but yeah, just putting it out there. If this is your first episode, I'm sorry, but also welcome to Little Things for Bonsai People. I am Evan Pardue. I operate Underhill Bonsai in Folsom, Louisiana. You can go over to underhillbonsai.com. You can go look at a couple of articles that I've written. There's a little short gallery that I'm trying to get together this year of some of my trees. You can go over to Little Things for Bonsai People on Instagram, and also Underhill Bonsai on Instagram. Follow us there. We do a lot of things there. I also sell online at UndernhillBonsaiStore.com, and you can also catch our our Little Things for Bonsai People t-shirts. You can catch them at the web store at UndernhillBonsaiStore.com at this moment. It may change in the future. And then for Mike, since Mike is not here, Mike Lane is a bonsai professional teaching and also working on private collections in South Florida, in the Fort Myers area. He also travels across the United States and teaches classes as well. You can go over to kitsunebonsai.com and go see what his seasonal offerings are, his classes, and his schedule that he has. And Mike's an awesome guy. Go over to his Instagram as well. Go see his trees that he's developed. He's a very good show-hen artist. He's done some really amazing show-hen in a short period of time. And then for Miss Carmen, what people need to know about you this year? Starting
nothing.
out.
No, I'm
nothing
just kidding.
at all.
You can find me over on Instagram at Becoming Bonsai. I'm also on Facebook, of course. Check out the Purple Pot Society, which is the National Women's Bonsai Group, where we work to encourage and inspire women to do bonsai. Actually, coming up this year, I'm, fingers crossed, maybe I shouldn't say anything yet, but if I say it, I'll be held accountable. I'm hoping to start a website for myself sometime in 2024. So I will give folks updates on that as that becomes an actual thing. So yay, exciting. Hooray. Wonderful.
Yeah. And this podcast will also be a interesting, fun way for not just me, Mike, and Carmen to track what we maybe formerly thought, things that we talked about and all that, but just like bonsai careers growing and stuff and talking about things that are happening as things go on. We're all pretty early and pretty young in this. So this is a great way to just, if you're a beginner, I think
join us.
Kind of follow our timelines. It's kind of interesting. I think it's a little weird. It's kind of like that movie, Boy. You ever seen that movie?
No.
Where they literally record this guy's life from like when he's a child, and then is it Boy? There was one of them. I think that's a different film. There's one where it literally is this kid who's they film him as a child actor with, I thought his dad was Kevin Bacon for some reason. And then they like have him as he grows up.
That's weird.
It's not Boy.
Is it like actual video footage or is it like a made up movie? Well, it's actual.
It's a movie.
Okay.
Where they strung together, like they recorded him when he was like
actual.
And then later on when he's 12, and then he was like a teenager, and then when he's a little bit more grown up. And then they put it together like this long project of this movie, like 20 years, and they put it together and made a movie like that makes sense chronologically with it. It's really interesting. But anyway, no, that's just a weird.
Yeah. Now we've got an audio record of ourselves.
Yeah, audio recording of us sounding like millennial
bunch of noobs,
bonsai people. But anyway, thank you guys for hanging out for this one. Can't wait to get this year going. This is a great start. So you guys have a great New Year's. Happy New Year's to you guys hearing this after the fact, and a good rest of the week. And we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Happy New Year. Woo!